So the words that God speaks to us this Sunday are sobering and dramatic. They invite you and I to contemplate our final end. Both the words of Jesus and the prophet Malachi speak about mighty signs and tribulations that will accompany the end of our earthly reality. Put simply, it's a reminder that we are not home. We are created for an eternal communion with God in heaven. And while eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it so much entered into our imagination what God has prepared for those who love him, we really do have foretastes even now of this everlasting joy and peace that the world cannot give us. And frankly, nothing else but eternal communion with the Creator so comprehensively accounts for the infinite hunger and thirst of the human heart. So it's natural and healthy at certain moments to track our progress individually and as a community. You might say from point A to point B. How am I doing? How are you doing? How are we doing? Where are we on the journey towards what we were made for? I'd like to reflect on these questions with you as a parish community this Sunday in a contemplative way. Consider it kind of like an examen, as St. Ignatius of Loyola would describe, identifying God's presence in our daily lives. But to do this, it's important, I think, to begin with one of the most important ongoing learnings that God is teaching me. How do we evaluate progress spiritually? Is it by the number of people coming to Mass each weekend, which, by the way, is up 400 people from last year? We have to count every October for the Archdiocese. Is it by the number of people volunteering, which is abundantly evident in our experience of Fall Fest and the many social outreach opportunities? Do we evaluate progress spiritually by the number of students in our Catholic school, which has its highest enrollment in our history, or by the number of First Communions and confirmations? Is it by our collection, which, by the way, is over $250,000 more than the previous year? While all these indicators are hopeful and I think a cause for happiness, I don't think it gets us to the deepest way of seeing. I have learned, and I am learning, that it's really only through the gift of gratitude cultivated daily in faith and prayerfully practiced, whereby you and I are led to glimpse God's activity, what he is doing here and now in our midst. You might say that gratitude yields for the believer the true analytics, acknowledging the activity of the Holy Spirit as primary, the one who's building us up in faith, hope, and charity. And this gratitude helps us to live in wonder and in trust, as opposed to being restless in our own activities, perpetually frustrated that we haven't arrived at point B. I know some parents who never allow themselves to enjoy being parents because they're so fixated on their kids getting to point B. Well, it's good to pay attention to that. But when we live gratitude, we actually have to enjoy the journey because God's acting now. And when we trust what he's doing here and now with us, for us, we remove the obstacles of pride and self-reliance, and we allow him to work even more freely. So with that being said, what do I see when I contemplate with gratitude our community of faith? First, I see God working to establish a culture of prayer here at St. Ambrose. We are nearing the 1-year threshold of perpetual Eucharistic adoration, and the fruits of hundreds of people committing to spend an hour of time in his holy presence, many more visiting, I would say is gradually transforming our parish into what St. John Paul II would say is meant to be a home and school of prayer. And the fruits of this are flowing into our relationships, our families, and our shared mission. To this end, culture of prayer, I think of the 200 plus parishioners who attended the first annual School of Prayer last Lent. I think of the many who have attended their first 3-day silent retreat, and simply the evident reverence that marks our liturgies, our communal prayer. Not to mention the Advent mornings for women, the Impact 133 mornings for men, and I could go on. Secondly, I see God working to establish a culture of encounter here at St. Ambrose. There is so much hope in my heart for the initiatives of walking with purpose for women, extending the tables for couples, the many small groups that have formed, young adults, all committing themselves to learning together, accountability and encouragement in walking in faith. Obviously, Fall Fest is a bit of a watershed moment for our community. The familiar faces that you get to reconnect with, and the new people you meet by volunteering or by simply attending. I even think of Saturday morning basketball as this culture of encounter, or of our faith formation family events. And this culture of encounter extends to the margins, as Pope Francis is so fond of saying, beginning at a young age, as we extend ourselves to introduce our youngest members to the gentle love of Jesus and catechesis of the Good Shepherd. But the culture of encounter also extends to the disorienting and painful aspects of life, which I find Stephen's ministry a beautiful response to. And in all these ways, we find Christ together, and a larger parish becomes smaller. We are not alone in living our faith. Third, I see God working to establish a culture of mercy here at St. Ambrose. Certainly the days of mercy during Advent and Lent, as well as the offering of daily confession, have been very impactful to this end. Besides the freedom to approach God for forgiveness, it helps you and I to engage others in conflict with charity, to give each other the benefit of the doubt, to learn acceptance of ourselves and others, and just the willingness to we haven't arrived. We're all just on this journey of disciples in the nobility of first grade. We are pilgrims on the way, we sometimes haphazardly, let's be honest. And because we haven't arrived, it allows us not to put labels on others, but to stand with humility on the same level ground. I have to tell you, in my experience of 19 years as a priest, it's that a clique-free community of faith is equipped to extend mercy to one another and to those who will never step foot in our church. Fourth, I see God working to establish a culture of generosity here at St. Ambrose. It is characteristic of this parish. So many people in this community simply step up and into what's needed. The sacrifices we're willing to make of our time and gifts, the willingness even to be inconvenienced for the good of others, will always be the burning center of what makes us grow. I think of our generous response to a parish to 2 life care centers in the area that we support, and the many opportunities put forth by our social outreach committee is wonderful. I'm so grateful for Deacon John's leadership with this, and asked him to say more in next week's bulletin so that that can even be held up to you more. So with all this, I want to thank you. I really want to thank you for being an integral part of our shared mission by your faith-filled presence. That's the most important thing, showing up, being counted for, being counted on. Thank you for the ways that you step out and in to serve. And thank you for your commitment to the obligations of what it means to belong. After all, what could be more adventurous than following Jesus together through life and to making disciples together? This was the last thing that he asked of us before he ascended into heaven. And none of this would be possible without the generous financial offering of many. For my first 3 years here at St. Ambrose, and if you're counting, I'm in my 5th, I did not mention money once, or even invite you to consider the reality of being good stewards. And while it did offer us a kind of reset as a parish, putting first things first, a relationship with God and each other, it is important and necessary to hold up. So why do I want, as your pastor, you to give financially? And when I say you, I really mean each one of you. First, because it's good for you. To give financially strengthens your relationship with God. It allows you to step into greater trust in Him and to taste the fruits of the Spirit in your life. Secondly, when we give to the parish that is our spiritual home, it establishes a greater sense of belonging to a particular people. You are needed. And when you give, you have a greater ownership of and satisfaction in the mission. In fact, next Sunday, I've asked 2 couples within our community to witness to their own journey of faith in financial giving. Third, why do I want you to give? Because it's good for the parish. It affords us concrete opportunities to have an impact with those on our campus and those outside the confines of our parish grounds. What a blessing to share in God's work, to build others up in faith and charity with the people you see this morning on your right and left, but then also bearing credible witness to the saving love and compassion of Jesus to those we meet in our wider community. And fourthly, I'd say, when you commit to giving financially now, not later, even when there are uncertainties about your own future, I find, personally, it frees me from the excuses that only reinforce self-reliance. To give financially allows us to live in gratitude and to be in the flow of God's generosity. So I want to close by offering a concrete invitation for you to prayerfully consider, that you would consider when you get our stewardship mailing from me before Thanksgiving, your offering for the next year in terms of a percentage of your income. Now why? It's biblical. From the Old Testament all the way through the New, this is what's asked, because it allows us to give God the first fruits and not a conditional gift. So here's how I would invite you to think about this. If last year you pledged or gave 1%, might you prayerfully consider giving 2%? If you pledged or gave 2%, might you prayerfully consider giving 3%? And if you didn't give it all, might you prayerfully consider giving 0.5% of your income? The truth is, the greater participation in sacrificial giving, the stronger and healthier the parish. I also want you to really consider making a pledge when you receive the stewardship mailing. A pledge actually speaks to our intentionality. We actually have a plan to give. And then it allows us together to be more thoughtful, to plan our shared mission for this coming year. I did use the word lastly, but this is lastly. A word about debt. The good news is, after navigating the pandemic with God's help and keeping good momentum and a very successful fiscal year, it is basically, if we made extraordinary payments, under $4 million. We are closing in. Why is it important for us as a parish community to be out of debt, which we never have been in our history? Because debt has spiritual consequences. It prevents us from dreaming, of being fully alive in our mission, and of impacting as many people as we possibly could. I can assure you we're trying to be discerning and measured in our approach to eliminating debt, and I would just ask for your prayers and openness to what this might mean in the year or two ahead. Tom Schischler, in his role as Director of Development Stewardship, has been a big help to me and to us. So thank you for openly listening, and I want to close by commending our grateful hearts and the path before us to our Mother Mary. May she inspire us to a greater openness to the Holy Spirit, and may she always be a mother to us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.